There is a moment, and every human being who has ever lived knows this moment, when everything you were absolutely certain about turns out to be wrong. Not slightly wrong, not mostly wrong, catastrophically wrong. Most people experience this moment quietly: a failed marriage, a career that collapses, a belief they held for decades that crumbles in a single conversation. But every once in a while, very rarely, the universe doesn't whisper a correction. It shouts one, with light, with thunder, with a voice that doesn't come from any human throat. This is the story of a man who was absolutely, completely, brilliantly certain he was doing the right thing. He was hunting people down to have them executed, and heaven itself reached down and stopped him mid-stride on a dusty road in the middle of the afternoon and turned him inside out. His name was Saul of Tarsus, and by the time this story is over, the world will never be the same. To understand what happened on that Damascus road, you have to understand who Saul was before the light hit him. Because we sometimes make the mistake of turning the villains of history into cardboard cutouts. We flatten them. We make them obviously evil, obviously wrong, wearing their darkness like a costume so that when they get stopped, it feels satisfying and simple. Saul was not simple. Saul of Tarsus was one of the most brilliant men of the ancient world. He was born in Tarsus, a city in what is now modern Turkey, into a Jewish family of high standing. His family were Roman citizens, which in that era was extraordinary. That citizenship wasn't just a piece of paper. It was protection, it was power, it was access to the highest corridors of the empire. But Saul didn't rest on inherited privilege. He was sent, young, hungry, burning with intellectual ambition, to Jerusalem, and there he studied under the greatest rabbi of the age, Gamaliel. If you wanted to understand Jewish law, theology, and tradition at the deepest possible level, Gamaliel was the man whose feet you sat at, and Saul absorbed everything. He didn't just learn the law, he loved it. He became a Pharisee, the most rigorous, the most demanding, the most devoted sect within Judaism. These were men who structured every hour of their day around obedience to God. They didn't see themselves as religious bureaucrats. They saw themselves as the last line of defense between Israel and the chaos of a world that had forgotten its creator. And Saul was rising fast. By the time he enters the story in the book of Acts, he is already marked as a man of destiny within his world, ferocious in his convictions, razor-sharp in his arguments, and utterly intolerant of what he considered heresy. And then came the Christians. This new movement, followers of a man named Jesus of Nazareth, who had been crucified by Rome just a few years earlier, was spreading through Jerusalem like fire through dry grass. And what they were saying was, to Saul's ears, outrageous. They were saying that this crucified carpenter was the Messiah, the long-awaited deliverer of Israel, the fulfillment of every prophecy, the Son of God himself. To a Pharisee like Saul, this wasn't just theologically incorrect, it was blasphemy. The law was clear. Anyone hung on a tree was under God's curse. A crucified man could not be the Messiah. The Messiah would come in power, not in shame. A dead rabbi nailed to a Roman cross was evidence of divine rejection, not divine appointment. And these people, these Christians, were confusing the population. They were pulling Jewish families apart. They were destabilizing the religious order. They were, in Saul's mind, enemies of God. And Saul was a man of deep faith, committing acts of profound evil. And he was absolutely certain he was right. It is somewhere around 34 or 35 AD. The church in Jerusalem has been scattered by the persecution. Believers have fled to cities across the region, to Samaria, to Antioch, to Damascus, and everywhere they go, the movement spreads. Persecution, it turns out, doesn't kill Christianity, it seeds it. Saul learns that there is now a significant community of followers of the Way, that's what they call themselves, in Damascus, the ancient capital of Syria, about 135 miles north of Jerusalem. He goes to the high priest and asks for letters of authorization. He wants permission to go to Damascus, find these people, and bring them back to Jerusalem in chains. Permission granted. He assembles a company of men and sets out. The journey from Jerusalem to Damascus would have taken about a week on foot, maybe less on horseback. The road winds through rough terrain, through desert, through the Jordan Valley, up into the highlands. Imagine Saul on this road. He is purposeful. He knows exactly what he's doing and why. He has the legal authority. He has the physical backup. He has the theological justification. He is, by every measure available to him, on the right side of this conflict. He might be reviewing his arguments in his head, thinking through how he'll identify the Christians when he gets there, planning the arrests, preparing for the resistance he'll likely face. He is, in short, utterly himself, brilliant, prepared, certain, righteous. And then, Acts 9 uses language that is strangely understated for what it's describing. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. That word, suddenly, in the Greek it's exyphnes, carries the sense of something utterly unexpected, something that ruptures the normal flow of time. One moment, ordinary road, ordinary afternoon. The next moment, the sky opens. The light wasn't a lamp. It wasn't a torch. It wasn't a natural phenomenon that Saul's educated mind could categorize and explain. It was, the text says, a light from heaven, and it was so intense, so overwhelming, so unlike anything in the spectrum of human experience that Saul, this strong, trained, physically capable man, fell to the ground. He didn't stumble. He didn't shade his eyes and look away. He fell. And then the voice came. You have to sit with the voice for a moment before you move past it, because the voice is the hinge on which this entire story, and arguably the entire history of Western civilization, turns. The voice said, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" Not, "Why are you persecuting my followers?" Not, "Why are you persecuting my church?" Why are you persecuting me? That word, me, is the earthquake hidden inside a seemingly simple question. Saul is lying face down on the road, blinded, shaking, and what remains of his rational mind is scrambling. He manages to ask the only question that matters. "Who are you, Lord?" And the voice answers, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting." I am Jesus, the crucified carpenter, the dead rabbi, the cursed one. I am Jesus. And in that moment, the entire architecture of Saul's world, every argument, every conviction, every carefully constructed theological certainty came apart like a building whose foundation has just been pulled out from under it. Because if the voice is real, and it clearly is real, because his companions are standing there stunned, because the light is real, because he can't see, then Jesus is real. And if Jesus is real, then the resurrection is real. And if the resurrection is real, then the crucifixion was not a curse, but a sacrifice. And if the sacrifice is real, then everything the Christians have been saying is true. And if everything the Christians have been saying is true, then everything Saul has been doing is not righteous. It is monstrous. He has been dragging innocent people from their homes. He has been throwing women in prison. He has been voting for executions. He has been doing it in the name of a God who has just revealed himself to be on the other side. Saul doesn't argue. He doesn't debate. He says 4 words, 4 of the most important words in human history. What shall I do, Lord? That question is not a small thing. That question is a man laying down everything he was, every credential, every achievement, every certainty, every identity, laying it all down on a dirt road in the midday sun and saying, I was wrong. I am wrong. What should I do? The voice gives him instructions. Go into Damascus. Wait. Someone will come and tell you what to do next. Saul gets up, and he can't see. The men with him have to lead him by the hand. This man who arrived at this road with all the power and authority in the world, now stumbling blind into the city he came to terrorize. He doesn't eat. He doesn't drink. For 3 days he sits in darkness. 3 days. There is something deeply intentional about that number, 3 days. The same number of days between the cross and the resurrection. Saul is in his own kind of tomb, blind, undone, his old self already dead, his new self not yet born. And he prays. Meanwhile, on the other side of Damascus, a man named Ananias is about to be asked to do the bravest thing anyone has ever been asked to do. Ananias is a Christian. He is part of exactly the community that Saul has come to Damascus to destroy. And God appears to Ananias in a vision and tells him to go and find Saul of Tarsus at a house on a street called Straight and lay hands on him so that he might regain his sight. Ananias' response is the most humanly understandable reaction in all of Scripture. He basically says, Lord, are you sure? Do you know who this man is? We've heard about this man. He has done terrible things in Jerusalem. He has legal authority to arrest everyone in this room right now. You want me to walk up to him and knock on the door? And God says, and this is the line that carries the weight of the whole story. Go. This man is my chosen instrument to carry my name before the Gentiles and their kings and before the people of Israel. My chosen instrument. The hunter has been chosen to be the messenger. The persecutor has been commissioned to be the apostle. The man who held the coats at Stephen's murder is going to spend the rest of his life taking the news of Stephen's Jesus to every corner of the known world and eventually die for it himself. Ananias goes. He finds the house. He walks in, and he places his hands on the man who could have him arrested and says something extraordinary. Brother Saul. Brother. Not prisoner, not enemy, not the man I am terrified of. Brother. The scales fall from Saul's eyes. Literally, the text says something like scales fell, and he can see again. He gets up, he is baptized, he eats a meal, and Saul of Tarsus, the great persecutor, the man who ravaged the church, the brilliant Pharisee who had dedicated his life to stamping out this movement, becomes Paul, apostle to the nations. Here is what happened next in the compressed language of history. Paul went on to plant churches across the entire Mediterranean world, in Galatia, in Macedonia, in Corinth, in Ephesus, in Rome. He wrote 13 letters that became the backbone of the New Testament. He articulated the theology of grace, of faith, of the cross, with a precision and depth that has shaped human thought for 2,000 years. He was beaten, shipwrecked, imprisoned, stoned, and left for dead. He kept going. He was eventually executed in Rome under Nero. Tradition says he was beheaded, a death befitting a Roman citizen. And even from his prison cell, in his final letter, he wrote these words, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. The man who began his story holding the coats of a murderous mob ended his story as one of the most consequential human beings who ever walked this earth. But here is what I want you to take away from this story. Not the theology, not the history, but the human thing at the center of it. Nobody was further from redemption than Saul of Tarsus on that Damascus road. Nobody was more certain. Nobody was more wrong. Nobody had done more damage. And heaven didn't give up on him. It didn't write him off. It stopped him, yes. It humbled him completely. It took everything he thought he knew and turned it to ash. But then it called him brother and gave him the greatest commission of his age. There is no version of you, no depth of wrongness, no weight of certainty that turned out to be error, no damage done in the name of conviction that places you beyond the reach of a God who can knock you flat on a dirt road and say, "I've been waiting for you. Get up. There's work to do." That's the Damascus Road. That's Paul. And that, if you let it be, is the most dangerous and beautiful idea in the world, that the people most violently opposed to grace are often the ones most radically transformed by it.
Sage Vera.